Hey everybody, my name is Aaron Locks and you've reached the Talk, Teach, Play channel. Thanks for showing up today and paying attention because we talk about everything each week, youth sports. So if you've got kids, you're a coach, you're a parent, you're an administrator, you work at a YMCA, wherever it is, recreational world, you're going to want to pay attention today because today with my guest, we're going to have a conversation around how to help kids develop a sense of who they are. So I met this new wonderful person who I'm going to let introduce herself, but Sarah, thanks for showing up.
Hey, no problem. What a great opportunity for us to help and build the kids up. So anytime I can be of assistance and help, I really appreciate it.
Awesome. We've had a chance to get to know each other, but my followers here, those that are paying attention, by the way, since I'll call you followers, do me a favor. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe. Please go ahead and take care of that. That helps us out. And that way you'll be able to get the updates of information. And those that have been sending the emails in and putting comments, I really appreciate that because that helps stir on more conversations as we go forward. All right, so back to the topic. Before we jump into the topic about how to help kids, can you share a little bit, maybe your background a little bit, Sarah, and just kind of so they know who you are a little bit and kind of your experiences?
Sure. I'll start. I'm Sara Williams, and I'm an athletic identity coach, and I help youth all the way up to pro sports and retirees deal with the outfall of athletic identity. And I teach people that they're more than the sport they play. And so I'll just start with a little backstory about me and like how I kind of come into this field, if that would be okay.
Sure.
So for me, I was a child, and when I was a child, I grew up in kind of a home that wasn't necessarily, I dealt with some abuse growing up in all different forms. And so for me, seeking out sports was a way to get away from the house. And so for me, I mean, I fell in love with anything and everything that kept me away from the house, which was, you know, a lot was sports, but I did a whole bunch of other things as well. But what I found out by doing this is that what I was actually seeking was I was seeking love, affection, acceptance outside my home. And I found that very fast, very quickly, that when you did well in sports, people noticed. And so that's kind of how I got into sports. And I wanted to do it so badly that I would ride my bike. It was 5 miles to school and back each day for practices. I, you know, paid my way to do it. I'd have to sell pop cans and whatever else to try to earn money, but anything I could. And I was into equestrians and any sport. So I played volleyball, softball, track, you name it, in 4-H. So I think that what happened was I poured my everything I had into sports and excelled as far as I could, though I'd get to a level and I'd reach a certain point of maybe a loss of self-worth. I only got so far. And so I also found out that I did that in my relationships, my careers, up until a certain point. So as an adult in sports, because I still do sports, I did start realizing my potential, but yet I still had so much self-doubt and was very insecure on the inside. Though no one would be able to tell on the outside because I was very stoic. I was very solid. I appeared very confident.
Okay.
And I was really, really, really good at this. And for me, I call it like a double life until all of a sudden I wasn't. I got severely injured from a traumatic brain injury in 2014. This injury changed everything about me, my personality, my job, my career. I lost almost everything. I was without work. I couldn't exercise. I had no hobbies. And I felt completely lost in a world that I had no idea how to exist in anymore. And, you know, I felt lost. I was in absolute darkness as everything that the way I had lived my life up till that point was completely gone. So as you can imagine, it's quite traumatic.
Yeah, you know, a lot of people leave sport on their because they choose to. It sounds like a lot of the things that kind of you've gone through have really been, well, I'm sorry that you kind of had that experience, but it seems as though you found a way to kind of find the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not an oncoming train, right? So it sounds like you can help, and we can kind of give some light. So when we talk about the topic about helping children develop a sense of who they are, and really what we're talking about for those, because a lot of times what happens is, you know, he's a baseball player, or he's a basketball player, or she's a soccer player, and that's kind of who they are. And then they kind of gravitate towards that. That's why I think it's so important they play multiple sports. You know, our goal at the National Academy of Athletics is to create, you know, confidence and optimism, right? Through personal growth, give them opportunity to do these things. So how does a sense of self, I guess, you know, it's funny, the old id back in the day, right? When I'm so old, I remember that. But so why is a sense of self for kids? How would you explain, like, why is that so important? I get it, but kind of can you give a little more meat and potatoes to that in terms of making it?
Sure. I think that, you know, I go back into a little bit of how I relate into this because I don't think I actually had a sense of self, because I tied my sense of self to what I did, right? I was seeking something outside of myself to give me what I was missing at home, right? So when we don't know who we are on the inside, we can easily adapt to what we're associated with or what we see, right? And so you can imagine that if you're getting acknowledgments as a child outside of your home or outside of yourself, then you really never know who you are. You're grasping on to others for approval, acceptance, etc. So if you don't have a strong sense of self, then you can easily fall into like peer pressure, or, you know, where that's becoming appealing because you're going to get noticed for doing things
right
maybe you don't necessarily want to do. And so if you don't have a sense of self and you don't know what you stand for or what you don't, you're going to go towards the pole where you feel like you fit in.
And a lot of times those aren't going to be healthy, obviously, right?
Correct.
So, and even the healthy ones can kind of, like, you know, engulf you and overwhelm you. I can imagine, you know, I think about it because, you know, I grew up playing tons of different sports with my friends, and we just did it because of the love of the game. And then as you got better and you really fell in love with something, you kind of migrated up, which makes total sense. So confidence is biggie for me, right? I'm really big on that. That's one of the ones I really want kids to get. So I can imagine that the confidence would come from if you were good at something and you're out there and people were kind of cheering, then you feel good and there's a confidence that's developed, right? But
sure.
What about the other side of that? Like how do we help kids as they're going through this journey? Let's use athletics, but it could be piano, it could be anything, right?
Right.
In terms of that goes. So talk to me a little bit about confidence. How does this all kind of come together?
Okay, so if I'm going to go in a definition right here, because I think some people get self-confidence and confidence, either they make them one thing or they don't know exactly what the difference is. So in order to have you can have confidence, like I proved to myself, I can be very confident,
right,
without having self-confidence, because that's what other people are telling me I'm good at or whatnot, or I get acknowledged when I do well, which means that I know I can do something. So self-confidence is having the belief in yourself that you can do something no matter what the obstacle, no matter what happens, even if you don't know the how, you know that you have enough self-preservation inside yourself to figure it out, right?
That makes sense.
And so confidence you get from actually doing things. So, you know, like, okay, well, I know I can kick the soccer ball because I've done it. I know I can fill this glass of water because I've done it. So that's where you get confidence, and that's where you get better and better, because you know you can do it. And so therefore you have a starting point and can get better. So in order to have a healthy sense of confidence, I think that it has to start with the self, is why, you know, where we start with being.
Do you feel that comes from, because I'm a big believer in experiential learning, right? So what you're talking about, I mean, if a child never really does certain things, then they're not going to feel confident in it. But obviously, once they can write their name, then they're confident they can write their name again, right? So
Right.
it's through repetition, but there's got to be an internal, for lack of better words, fire or motivation and interest in doing it for them to really move forward, progress, right? Because
Yeah.
if it's always external, you're going to this and you're going to this, and then it's not going to be confidence. It's really going to become more, I'm just doing this because I want to get yelled at, right?
Right. Well, and that's what I think is like, we start most of our kids out really young, trying to discover what their interests are, right? That's just in the nature of being a good parent or a good coach. We want them to try lots of things. And so at first, you know, they may be doing it to please us, the coaches, the parents, etc. So if we're creating, you know, a dynamic where we're not allowing them to express their selves if they like it or not, like then we're hushing them, right? So, and that's where I agree with you that offering lots of different things and letting them try different things gives them a different skill set, which they can become confident at. And as you and I know, we have lots of sports give us lots of assets that we can use in our life.
So really then part of this is, as I'm kind of processing step by step, then the other part to me kind of comes up, which is basically how to create that self or that independence, right? Because that's what we want. We want our kids to be able to care for themselves. We want them to be able to take care of themselves and go forward with that. So in the progression that you're talking about in terms of understanding, because again, I feel like we have a lot of robots. Kids follow a lot rather than the opportunity to figure things out for themselves. We used to be able to create games and innovate and do things on our own. And now it seems like kids are programmed all the time. You have to be in this class or programmed or after school or whatever the case is, instead of having that free play. So free play is so important, right? So, so how do we, or what's your thoughts on, I guess, how do we get them kind of creating and independent thinking, I guess, right?
Yeah, I think, you know, I think this can go two ways as well. So I think that being independent is an incredible skill. It teaches a lot of kids to be resilient, right?
Yeah.
And I just want to share, like, on like allowing them to make mistakes as part of how we reach independence, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we make mistakes, right? As adults, every day we make mistakes doing one thing or another. And so, like, I just want to see the same kindness happen for the kids, right? Even though we're teaching them, I think that, you know, I watched something this weekend on a couple teaching their like 3-year-old how to ski, right? And it was just all about that. Like, let them just go and like experience things. And if they fall, they can get up. So basically they're teaching themselves to self-soothe, right? To talk to themselves, positive speaking, positive thinking, because they still have to get down to the bottom of the hill. And so even though the parents are there, right, alongside them, they're teaching their kids incredible skills that they aren't going to get unless they do it themselves, right?
Yes.
And I see on the opposite end, where like a lot of people that I coach that are in pro sports, right? I mean, they have a schedule and they have a routine that's been set out for them every single day for however many years. And when I see when they're into a transition period, the independence isn't there because it's been laid out. So we want to make sure we have some sort of a balance.
So it's interesting. So it really is about finding a way to give your child the support, the unconditional love to take risks and try. I tell everybody, my mom was amazing because she gave us unconditional love and she wanted us to succeed, but that wasn't her ultimate goal as we went through the journey, was the journey itself, which was to learn and you know, again, you know, fail and get back up yourself. And what do you do? And if you know, what is it? Don't cry over spilled milk. I mean, all these things. And so part of that is about control, right? Because that's the part where parents, we have to trust the process a little bit and encourage them to take the risks, right?
Right. Yeah, taking risks is a normal part of growth, right? And I think that in order for us as humans to get better at anything, we need to take risks. And we should allow our children to do the same. I was pretty controlling parent, to be honest. So, you know, I've learned a lot since then. And I think that's why I say I learned what maybe I shouldn't have done or should have encouraged. But I think that when, you know, if you're taking a risk, because it should feel a little scary to you, you should have an uneasy feeling in your stomach. You may want to doubt doing it. But I think that when you're in a situation like that, and you go, okay, well, you never know if you're not going to try, right? And I also like let people know that if you take a risk, it can reap great rewards. It doesn't always, right? It doesn't always. But I'm like, you think that people out here who are doing great things in this world got here by being stagnant? No. Not at all. Right. And I also believe that failure should be an important part of coaching and raising our children, because I think more people would take bigger risks if they weren't afraid of failure. So I think that's why we have to teach that failure is the key to creating opportunities, right? Failure is just, all it means is that it just means that what you did didn't work. It doesn't mean that you're a failure, right? Just because you've tried something and it failed does not mean you're a failure. It means you have the opportunity to try something new.
And you may even try the same thing over again, just do it a little bit different.
A little different, yeah.
You know, I think for one couple of things. One is I feel like when you can be comfortable being uncomfortable, then life gets really cool, right? You know what I mean? And kids kind of have that innately, but we have to kind of nudge them and say, okay, give it a try. It's almost like when it's time to swim, right? They're afraid of the water. But at some point you have to kind of let them go forward, and you're not going to let them drown, of course, but you have to allow them to kind of feel that. And you're right, because man, what a great thought of the times in our lives where learning to drive a car, whatever it is, there's a little bit of that fear, a little bit of the anxiety. But if you have gone through enough learning and growing as a child, and you've been allowed to fail without, you're bad, or you this, instead of, you know, boy, I'll tell you what, my mom used to tell me, I remember just a few times because I was good, right? But she would say, I don't like what you're doing, but I still love you. Right. And we're not going to do that anymore, right? I remember being little. I don't like what you're doing, but I still love you. And there was consequences for what we did, but what a great message. You know what I mean? I never felt like I was kind of left out there. Wow. And, you know, and speaking of my mom, I also thought she really started me young at kind of self-care. You know what I mean? Like, okay, you know, pick out your clothes, you know what I mean? Start to, you know, even we started doing, you know, laundry at a young age too, but, you know, helping you prepare your meals. I mean, start to do things for yourself, because that's part of the confidence factor you're talking about, right?
Yeah, I think that what you're describing is also part of independence. Right. That type of self-care, to me, like taking care of oneself, is developing independence. So for me, self-care, I think self-care gets, it can be all mixed up and meshed into a big blurry thing. So for me, my definition is a little bit different. Some consider it like, you know, go getting a massage or a mani-pedi or something like that. A lot of people might think it's that. But what I think self-care looks like is one that enriches your own mind. And so for me, that looks like speaking kindly to yourself, getting enough sleep, celebrating things you did well. I think that we as humans, especially kids, when we're growing up and we're trying to please everybody and get those accolades, right? We spend so much time beating ourselves up, and I just don't know why. It's just one of the things that our brain does because we think it's protecting us from taking risks because we feel scared. So self-care is something that I encourage with being kind and taking compassion of oneself.
Okay. So how do coaches, parents, administrators, how do we provide that for kids? How do we help them? Because it seems like one hand you're saying, let's give them some independence and let them find their way. And the other hand, we're kind of saying, okay, here's some tools, I guess, because that's part of the challenge, right? We got to give them the tools, and then it's up to them to use it. It's your toolbox, right? We're building a toolbox for them, an emotional toolbox, a physical toolbox, right? All these things and how they use them. So how do you suggest, if like you're a youth coach out there, right? Or you're a parent volunteer, or you're a league administrator, whatever it is, and you're going to go ahead and try to give these kids these tools, how do you suggest they go about doing that, or where they even start?
Well, so we're trying to give them a sense of self-worth or their self-confidence, or all of it. Like, how are we encouraging them?
Yeah, I guess if I'm a youth coach and I'm listening right now, help me to help the kids to have a better experience. So what can we tell them?
So I think that one thing is, what I really like to do is ask them why they feel the way they feel, right? Like, we want, one thing, the biggest thing is to encourage the being able to allow their emotions and feelings. I think for so long, we've been taught, like, get up, shake it off, get back on the horse, don't cry, right? All these things, because we think that we need to be tough, but that's an external tough, right? It's not necessarily on the inside. So I think really that's going to turn people around more than anything, is really allowing them to be themselves, like, share what they're feeling. Give them the kudos that if they did something good and if they did something back. We can ask them for their self-critiques, right?
Right.
And then we can correct them. We can guide them with what they think about themselves. Like, why do you think that that was a bad move? And then you can go, no, maybe it wasn't a bad move. Maybe you just did it 3 seconds too early, or, whatever. So I think that if we are allowed to give them feedback in a positive, meaningful way that's intentional,
right,
and allowing them to just, they're going to be sad after a game if they lost or they did something wrong. Allow it. Let them be there. Let them process it. Let them share something about it. And then let's not make it mean anything more than that.
Right. So the communication, and you've said it several times, and we talk a lot about it here, is why, right?
Right. Yeah.
Why? Knowing the why. In fact, I was talking with Kristen from Noble Ones not too long ago, and we were discussing this, just helping the kids figure out their why. Actually, all of us need to figure out our why, right?
Right.
So that's an important piece. So okay, so as we go through this process, I'm sure there's skills and tools that can be learned, but the reality is it's giving them that kind of that care. And I would imagine role modeling has a lot to do with this, right? If you're coaching, you got to be a role model, right? If you're
Absolutely.
a parent, how you carry yourself. And if something happens and you're slamming things down, they're going to emulate that, right?
Exactly.
That's what they're going to see. So do you got any suggestions or tips around maybe the role modeling component? Because it sounds like you're talking about open and honest communication, right?
Right. Yeah. And so for me, like, we want to create good humans, right? Is pretty much like the bottom line. And basically really encouraging that they can do what they set their minds to, no matter what. And so for me to be able to emulate that to somebody else, I also need to do that in my life. So I need to say, I can share some personal experience and say, okay, well, you know what? I used to do this, and I learned that this got me in trouble or whatever. And so being human, being relatable, right? And sharing things with them, going, oh, I used to do that too. And, I learned this, and tell them a story. Like, they relate with what you do. Like, children learn what they see, what they live, what they do, right? And so if we can be good examples by also being good humans to them, that's how we can be a good role model. And then, like, ask them if they have people that they look up to. Again, ask them why. What are the characteristics that they like about that person? What do they not like?
So it's not just who's your favorite player, who you look up to. It's really, what is it about them that's really inspiring you? And maybe, again, how does that make you feel, right? Or what are the feelings associated with that? Got it. Okay. So let's talk about now, because I got a note, which some parents write information. So I figure, okay, I'm going to give you some insight on it, right? So Seth is actually, he's a coach who's got a kid, a 7-year-old. And so his son is nervous about trying a different sport. They're actually basketball and soccer family, but there's a whole bunch of kids in the neighborhood that play lacrosse. And he's kind of seen it, and the kids look like they're having fun. So for him to try a new sport, Seth, if you're watching here we go. We give you some insight. So what do we tell Seth in terms of helping his son, who is a pretty good little athlete, I guess, but now he's trying something where it's not shooting a ball or kicking a ball. Now he's got to carry a stick and catch and throw and try something different. What do you suggest?
Oh, I would absolutely go full speed into whatever they're interested in, because you're never going to know what sparks joy or creates passion unless they have the opportunity. So, you know, the thing that I know we run into sometimes is competing seasons, right? So
Oh, yeah.
you have to pick a sport for a season and stick with it, right? And so that's kind of the tool that I use is like, okay, you want to try something new, then you stick with it for a season and then we'll go from there. We can reevaluate. But you don't get to quit mid-season because that's not what we do.
Right.
But also it gives them an opportunity to try things without having to be like, okay, I'm giving up everything because that's a fear.
Right.
Or like I have to go all into this because that's not true, right? So just creating, and that just develops more hand-eye coordination, cross training we do all across the board in every sport. So it's really, actually, there's just really no negative that I can see.
I think there's also a cool part that I would say to Seth or any of you that are thinking about, you know, when your kid's going to try something new, whether it's a sport or anything, is that they're going to learn, but it's okay if they're not great at it. Like, let's say they're a great basketball player and they want to try lacrosse and they're not very good at it. That's okay, because sometimes learning to be the leader, the best, is great, and sometimes learning to be a teammate on the bench who's cheering the team on, that's okay too, because you have to learn both ends of it. And if you want to be better at lacrosse, you can, but you're going to have to do the work. And so they're learning these life lessons that, again, I tell everybody, I don't think there's any better life skill teaching tool than youth sports if it's done right, right?
Yeah.
But what a great opportunity for kids to say, okay, well, in this sport, I happen to be, you know, the king dog or whatever. And this one, not so much, but I'm still having fun and I get to hang out with my friends. And there's also empathy that's learned from it, right? Because if
Yes.
you're the player, you feel like you, right? There's just so much that can be learned from this experience. Right.
Right. Yeah. And I think, you know, honestly, that gives them a lot of chance to learn. You know, we start from the bottom a lot, right? I mean, nobody starts out at the top.
Right.
And so by trying new things and like, I also call it embracing the suck, right? We're going to really suck.
Say that again. What is it? Embracing
right?
the suck.
Yeah, embrace the suck, because, and the more we do that, the more comfortable we are, honestly, taking risks later in life. So,
yeah, right, totally.
Right. So, yeah, I just make it a little bit more fun when we say, well, we're just going to embrace the suck, because that's what's going to happen. You know, we all start somewhere.
It's the opposite of paralyzation by analyzation, right? Embrace the suck versus paralyzation by analyzation. What's it going to be, right? Well, let's give it a try. And you know what? I don't know about you, but like sometimes I just go down the path and it ends up somewhere and it turns out to be amazing. And other times you're standing in mud going, how did I get here and how do I get out of it? But you figure it out. And that's the key. We need our kids to learn, because unfortunately they're so told and so programmed that then when something doesn't go right, they don't have the self ability to spring out of that and to figure it out.
Right.
Part of that is self-discovery. Right? They take it personal, right? But that really comes to self-discovery. They have to figure that out. So, okay, how do we get them to figure self-discovery out? How do we encourage that component? How do we get them out of the program and get them into self-discovery?
Well, I think too, another thing I want to add is joy, right? Creating opportunities for joy. And so if they want to try something else, new out, that's encouraging, that's having them allow the curiosity. And it's also then they're experiencing joy because they get to try something new. And, you know, they may feel aggravated. Or I remember when I learned how to ski the first time, oh my gosh, that was there was no joy being had up on that mountain. Right. But, you know, had I never done it, I would have never enjoyed a whole, you know, different side of my life at one point. So, you know, for me, like just being allowed to find the joy in things, because, you know, childhood only lasts so long, and we're in a, you know, growing up too fast is not fun.
Right.
It's not.
You know, I was working with a pro team, that baseball, and the catcher told me, he said, the number one thing that kids have to have in order to excel in life, to be able to play sports at high school, varsity, college, whatever, is passion. It's got to be their passion, because you can do it for a time if you're told what to do, but to really excel and really make it happen, it's got to be their passion. And it sounds to me, that's kind of what you're saying is let's encourage kids to learn through the experience, right?
Yeah.
And have fun and find their joy. And sometimes their joy may not be an organized sport. It might be, skipping rocks on a lake. It might be something else. And so we kind of need to encourage them to be comfortable being uncomfortable, embrace the suck, right?
Mm-hmm.
And go out there and do that. Yeah, I love that. Very cool.
Yeah.
Good. All right. So if you had 1 or 2 tips for a coach or a parent, because I kind of wrap up here just because of time, and I want to value your time as well. What would you suggest? What do you recommend for any parent or coach out there that's kind of like, okay, this is my takeaway. What would you suggest?
Let them be individuals, right? That's number one thing, and that embrace that, meaning let them allow them to share their feelings, and let them communicate, because most everybody has problems in communications at some point or another in their life. So if we are starting out younger and we can be a part of that catalyst to let them develop communication skills younger,
right.
And that's going to be by asking them questions, asking them the why, right?
Yeah.
And then just be very, also another thing I want everybody to do is to help let them celebrate, right? Let them celebrate things that have gone well, because we are so hard on ourselves. And as adults, we think we need to do everything so well, so perfect, this and that even when you reach a milestone or something, that we don't spend enough time celebrating all the work that it took to get there, because it's one moment of being excited and then it's gone.
Right. Well, and we all know it all goes so fast, right? I mean,
yeah.
Just by kids, if you got a kid that's 20 now, you look back and you see a little one and you go, oh, it goes so fast. And when you're in the middle of it, you don't think about it. So it's good. So being relevant, that's good. All right. Well, wow. I've got some notes. I got some mental notes. I got some ideas, and embrace the suck, man. I'm gonna make sure I'll put a little asterisk by that for you in terms of notes. But that's a good one. I'm excited about that. So, what would you, if someone wants to reach out, maybe they want to have a conversation, maybe help their team, maybe help the individual. I know you do life coaching and athletic identity coaching. Where do they follow you? Where do they find you? How can they get information?
I do. I have a website. My website is www.borntoendure.com.
Okay.
And you can also find me on Instagram at borntoendure.coaching. And I help athletes learn who they are on and off the court. Great.
Man, I appreciate it, Sarah. Just really good insights. And again, it's a snippet. Obviously, there's a lot more depth to this, what we're doing. But we're encouraging the kids, encourage the parents to, again, embrace the suck, go out there and get comfortable being uncomfortable and try new things, which I think is great. Helping the kids find a sense of who they are is so important, because if they can find it when they're younger, they may lose it along the way, but they'll be able to find it again through the journey, instead of at some point you go, okay, who am I? What am I doing here going forward? So
Right. Yeah, I think you tie it back to the values, always back to the values. You can always find your way back if you know what you stand for.
There you go. I love that. Yeah. Okay. Well, I appreciate everybody for paying attention and following along. If you have already subscribed, thank you so much. If you haven't, please go ahead and do so. Those that are continuing to send in your ideas and thoughts, it's really helped. Here at the Talk, Teach, Play, we want to help anybody that's involved in youth sports and kids to make sure it's a positive experience for them. They get a chance to have a positive, fun time, right? Whatever it is, fun. Embrace the suck. I'm going to keep coming out of it. I love it. But you can locate myself through the National Academy of Athletics. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on Instagram, all the different ones. And also, check out Clubhouse, because there's been some great conversations there and it's been a lot of fun. Yeah, man, very cool. So I appreciate your time. I will remind everybody, whether you're playing a sport or you're at work or whatever it is, remind your kids when you're out there to do their best to always play hard and have fun. So thanks, Sarah. Appreciate your time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.